This is a short video on Python strings. First of all, what is a string? Okay, strings in Python are a sequence of one or more characters. More specifically, they include letters, numbers, punctuation, and other symbols. Okay. Now, a Python string is always written inside quotation marks. Actually, you can use either a single quote or a double quote. The only requirement is that if you start with a single quote, you should end that string with a double quote, with a single quote. And if you start with a double quote, you should end it also with a double quote. Therefore, this example cat within single quote is a string, and dog is also a string. It starts and ends with a double quote. Now let's go over to a quick Python notebook and take a look at this in action. Here is an example of a string. We could write hello world, and that's a string. Here is another string. Let me start with a double quote and then I write cat, and that works fine. But how about if I start with a double quote but try to end with a single quote? Python doesn't like that. It gives a syntax error because this string has officially not actually ended, right? Now finally, we can do something. We can actually have a variable called animal in which we store cat, right? The variable is the string, and now if you ask for the type of this variable, notice that Python says it knows that this is a string, str. Okay. The next topic within strings that we want to cover would be how to combine different strings, also referred to as string concatenation. Okay. In fact, in Python, string combining or concatenation is so easy that you can actually do it with a plus sign. So you can simply take any two or more strings and just combine them with a plus sign. Here is an example. If I take three strings, right, hello, world, exclamation, I take all of them and then put a couple of plus signs in between them, that becomes the single string hello world. That's all. We could also do it this way. Let's say that ID was equal to this string RGF 2010, and then you can say the heat exchanger plus ID plus is overheating. That will become one string, the heat exchanger RGF 2010 is overheating. So you could simply use strings with a few key variables inside this way. Finally, you can actually also multiply strings with integers, and here is how you would use it. So here is an example of one string hey, and if you say hey space multiplied by 3, it will actually print out, become one string hey hey hey. Notice the spaces in between all three hays, after all three hays. Okay. Let's now look at string concatenation, which is just a fancy way of simply adding a few strings, right? So if you do that, it becomes one string. You could do something like this. My favorite pet is a, and then you have to do plus pet. Notice that the second pet is in black. It's a variable. Okay, so if I do this, it says that my favorite pet is a dog. Okay, because it replaced this variable with this string. We've simply added up. Finally, you can actually multiply strings, as we know. So you could do something like this. Let's say that I do row star 3 plus, and then you will say row. Okay, maybe I didn't need this extra there. Thank you. The third topic under strings is actually the fact that Python strings are called list-like. They're very similar to lists. But what does that mean? That means that some of the operations that you do on lists, you can actually do on strings also. For example, we can ask for the length of a string, right? Strings have a length. So you can say len of hello world exclamation. And that will be 12 because the two English words hello and world have 5 letters each. Space plus exclamation is 12. You can also do the following. You can say that greet is equal to hello world, right? We store it in a variable, and then you can do list slicing. We can say greet 6 colon till the end, right? Give me from position 6 all the way through the end, and it'll print out just the word. Okay, so that's how you can slice a list, slice a string, very similar to slicing a list. Now let's go over to Python and see this in action. Let's look at an example of what we mean by list-like behavior. So we need a string. Let's just say any word is okay, right? So now, because this is sort of like a list, I can ask, and it says that this word has a length of 12. Okay, we can also do, now we can do word slicing, right? I can take the word and say just give me the last 3 letters, which is ion. Or if you want just the first 5 letters, you can do that, and then that will be a substring, in this case a inter. And finally, you can do things like this. For each character in this word, why don't you print that character, right? So it goes through the loop and prints it all. That's what we mean when we say that a Python string has list-like behavior. The fourth concept to look at under Python strings is a recently introduced concept called f-strings. So what are f-strings? They're actually very similar to regular strings, but with the letter f preceded. Okay, right? They start with an f and then a whole string, and there is one important key difference. You can actually have curly braces inside them, and then you put a variable in there, in which case Python knows to replace that whole curly braces and variable with actual variable value. Let's look at an example. Let's look at an example, and this will become very clear. Let's say that EQP was RF131. Notice that it is within quotes. Temperature is 90. In this case, just a number, an integer. Then you can create an f string like this. You can say print f within quotes. EQP has a temperature of TMP, but notice that EQP and temperature and TMP are within quotes. So what Python will do when it will print the following, right? It will replace EQP with RF131. And it will replace TMP with 90, and so it will print out saying RF131 has a temperature of 90. Okay, that's what it will do. So for example, if you had a big list of names with their employee IDs, you could loop through them, and each time you can simply format it nicely as an f string. So f string's main purpose is to format. Now let's go and look at that in action. Finally, let's look at f strings. For an f string, we need a couple of variables. What did we say? I think we had an equipment, which was something like an RF131. And then I need a temperature. Let's just call that TMP. Let's say that is 90 degrees or something. Now you can create an f string. So you put f within quotes. Let's say within the 2 quotes. You can say that the equipment the equipment, what equipment is that? It's EQP has a temperature of, and then you say TMP. Now you need to close the string. Okay, so now you see how it has replaced. Why would this be useful? Here is one example. Let's say I created, I don't know, let's say I had a list. Right now I can say that for each pet under pets inside the list called pets, I could print an f string. I can say I like, notice the curly braces, you put the variable p there. Okay, so now we don't have to type anything, and then it will print one by one. That's how f strings work for formatting. So that was our short video, a real quick look at Python strings. We looked at 4 things. First of all, what are strings, how to concatenate or combine them, why strings are list-like objects, and finally we looked at what are called f strings, okay, how to format using an f string. Thank you for your time.